Name your price.
Wahala, these English rich guys are so funny.
It's just a week contract and you go with the 1 million fair. You obviously need it.
Well, you better get out of my sight this minute with that your dirty mouth.
That's my card. Call me if you change your mind. Remember, you have just tonight to decide.
Decide. With that, Roland walked majestically toward his expensive car, the kind that swallowed the narrow street in silence and perfume. Miranda folded her arms as the steaming pot of beans boiled angrily over her charcoal stove. "There is nothing I will not see in Lagos," she muttered. "Now let's go back to how it all started." It was one of those slow Lagos afternoons when the sun felt personal, the heat pressed down on the zinc roofs, and even the usual street noise seemed tired. Miranda stood behind her small wooden table, stirring a pot of beans that simmered lazily over charcoal. The smell of palm oil and pepper floated into the road, mixing with dust and petrol fumes. Business had been quiet. 2 students had bought a car earlier. A Kiki driver had promised to come back later. He hadn't. Miranda wiped sweat from her forehead with the edge of her scarf and adjusted the stool beside her stand. Across the street, Mama Bisi was arguing loudly with a supplier over the price of tomatoes. Just another ordinary day, until the street changed. It started with silence, then the low, powerful hum of an engine that didn't belong there. Heads turned. A sleek black G-Wagon rolled slowly into the narrow street like it had taken a wrong turn into reality. The kind of car you see on billboards, not beside open gutters and hanging laundry. Even the children stopped playing. Miranda assumed it was lost. Maybe someone visiting one of the few newly renovated houses at the end of the street. The car stopped directly in front of her stand. She frowned slightly. The tinted window slid down smoothly. And there he was, clean cut, expensive sunglasses, shirt that looked ironed by professionals who charged in dollars. He didn't greet, didn't smile. He simply looked at her. Not at the food, at her. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, not in a crude way, but in assessment, as if he were calculating numbers in his head. Miranda straightened instinctively. "Yes?" she asked, her tone neutral. He removed his sunglasses slowly. "How much do you make in a week?" Miranda blinked. "Excuse me? 1 million," he said calmly, as if he were offering to buy a bottle of water, "to be my fake girlfriend for 1 week." The street seemed to pause. Even the boiling beans behind her let out a loud bubble at that exact moment. Miranda stared at him, waiting for laughter, for someone to jump out with a camera and shout it was a prank. Nothing. He was serious. She let her eyes travel over him now, the watch, the polished steering wheel, the quiet confidence. Then she folded her arms. "Wahala," she said slowly. "This English rich guys are so funny." His expression didn't change. "I'm not joking." "And I'm not on display," she replied sharply. He leaned slightly toward the window. "It's just a week thing then. You go with the money? You obviously need it." That did it. Her jaw tightened. Customers might come and go, and money might be tight. But pity? That one she could not swallow. "You better get out of my sight this minute with that your dirty mouth," Miranda snapped, her voice low but steady. A few people nearby pretended not to listen. He studied her for a second longer. Not offended, interested. "Name your price," he said. Miranda laughed in disbelief. "Name my price? You think this is below gun market?" He reached into his inner pocket, pulled out a sleek white card, and placed it carefully on the edge of her wooden table. "That's my card. Call me if you change your mind. Remember, you have just tonight to decide." With that, he rolled the window up. The G-Wagon pulled away as smoothly as it arrived, leaving behind dust, whispers, and confusion. Miranda stood still. The beans behind her began to boil over. She quickly turned back to the stove, lifting the pot before it spilled completely. "There is nothing I will not see in Lagos," she muttered under her breath. But her eyes drifted back to the small white card resting on her table. 1 million, for 1 week. The street slowly returned to normal. But Miranda knew something had shifted, and Lagos, as always, was watching. Miranda was 26, a street food vendor who sold beans and akara from a small stand in a neighborhood where houses faced each other so closely that if your neighbor sneezed, you said, "Bless you," without leaving your bed. She grew up in a face me, I face you compound in Mushin, 10 rooms, 1 corridor, 3 shared toilets, and gossip that traveled faster than electricity. Her mother used to say, "Lagos will test you. If you pass, it rewards you. If you fail, it swallows you." Miranda didn't plan to fail, but she also didn't plan for a man like Roland. Roland Adeyemi did not belong in her world. His shoes alone could pay her rent for 6 months. His wristwatch could probably rebuild the entire compound she grew up in. He spoke English like it was a performance, like he wanted the heir to know he had studied abroad. And now he wanted her, not for love, for business, a fake relationship, for 1 week, Valentine's week. She picked up the card, looked at it for a brief moment, and slid it in her brown bag. That evening, Miranda sat on her thin mattress, staring at the small white card in her hand. Roland Adeyemi, CEO. Adeyemi Holdings phone number. Email. A faint, expensive scent. Her rent was 3 months overdue. Her younger brother's school fees were hanging over her head like harmattan dust. Her mother's blood pressure medication needed refill. She hated that he was right. She needed the money, but she hated even more that he knew. Roland, meanwhile, sat in his Lekki apartment overlooking the lagoon, staring at his phone. He wasn't used to being insulted, especially not by a woman selling akara on the roadside. But there was something about the way Miranda looked at him. Not impressed, not intimidated, just angry. Real. He had been seeing Vanessa for almost 2 years. Vanessa of designer bags and charity galas. Vanessa whose father was on the board of one of Roland's biggest investors. Vanessa who had decided to end things 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. Publicly. At a fundraising event. In front of bloggers. She had called him emotionally unavailable. Cold. A robot with money. The headlines had loved it. Now his mother was planning a massive Valentine's charity gala, and Vanessa would be there. With her new boyfriend. Roland needed a date. Not just any date. Someone unexpected. Someone who would make Vanessa blink. Miranda didn't sleep, not even for a minute. She lay on her thin mattress, the old spring poking her side every time she turned. The ceiling above her was cracked in 2 places, faint brown stains spreading like maps of countries she would probably never visit. A mosquito buzzed near her ear, and she slapped at the air in irritation. Outside, the compound was never truly quiet. Someone's baby cried. A couple argued in low, tired voices. A generator coughed to life and then died again. The smell of fried fish drifted in through the window. Lagos did not care if your heart was heavy. It still moved. She turned again, upper pulling her wrapper tighter around her chest. "Name your price." The words replayed in her head like an insult that refused to fade. Name your price. As if she were a bag in Balogan Market. As if she were something to be negotiated. She squeezed her eyes shut, but then another voice answered inside her. "It's just a week thing, then. You go with the money. You obviously need it." That part hurt more, because it was true. Her landlord had knocked 3 times that week. The last knock came with a threat. Her younger brother had sent a voice note that afternoon trying to sound strong. "It's okay, sis. They said I can pay next week." But she could hear the embarrassment beneath his forced laughter. Her mother's medication finished yesterday. Miranda pressed her palm against her forehead. "What kind of nonsense life is this?" she muttered into the darkness. She had worked since she could remember wake up before dawn, fried akara until the oil splashed tiny scars onto her hands, counted coin carefully, smiled at rude customers, survived harassment, insults, police raids, and rain that destroyed entire days of sales. And still, she was one emergency away from drowning. She turned onto her back again, staring at the ceiling. If she said yes, what did that make her? If she said no, what did that solve? Her pride could not pay rent. At 9 a.m., Roland's phone rang. Unknown number. He was already dressed for work, seated at the small dining table in his apartment with a cup of black coffee growing cold beside him. He had barely slept. For someone used to closing multi-million naira deals without blinking, it irritated him that a street food vendor had kept him awake. He answered on the first ring. "You have mouth, Shah," Miranda said without greeting. He leaned back slightly, the corner of his lips lifting. "So you've reconsidered?" "Don't get ahead of yourself," she replied quickly. "If I'm doing this nonsense, we do it my way." There was no nervousness in her voice, no gratitude either. "Name your terms." "1 week," she said firmly. "Clear agreement. No touching me anyhow. No embarrassing me. No treating me like charity case. And you pay half up front." Roland rested his elbow on the table, studying the ceiling as if he could see her through it. She spoke like someone who had learned early that the world only respected firmness. She wasn't begging. She was setting structure. He found himself oddly impressed. "Done," he said calmly. Silence lingered for half a second. "And one more thing," Miranda added. "Yes? You don't talk to me like I'm your staff." That one landed. Roland straightened in his chair. He replayed their first conversation in his mind, his tone, his assumptions, the ease with which he had said, "You obviously need it." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for him to swallow pride. Then, softer, "Fine." Miranda exhaled quietly on the other end, as though she had just won something small but important. "Send your address. I'll send my driver to pick you up." "Good. Send the driver by noon," she said. "And Mr. Adeyemi?" "Yes?" "This is business. Don't forget." The line went dead. Roland scoffed. Of course this is a business who cares about a street vendor. Stared at his phone for a moment before placing it on the table. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't the one in control. And strangely, he didn't entirely mind. That afternoon, Roland sent a driver. Miranda stood in front of her tiny mirror, adjusting the only good dress she owned, a simple fitted black gown she had sewn herself 2 years ago. When the black car pulled up, her neighbors nearly collapsed from curiosity. On, Miranda, who is that? Have you finally blown? Is he a Yahoo boy?" Miranda ignored them and stepped inside the car. The air conditioning alone felt like a different country. Roland's apartment was glass and silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the living room, revealing a calm stretch of lagoon that shimmered under the afternoon sun. The furniture looked untouched, like it had been arranged for a magazine shoot rather than for living. No clutter, no noise, no smell of cooking. Just cool air and polished surfaces. Miranda stepped in carefully, her sandals almost too loud against the marble floor. She tried not to look impressed. "You live here alone?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. "Yes." That single sound carried many thoughts. She walked around slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. She examined the abstract art on the wall, the spotless kitchen island, the expensive leather couch. She didn't sit, didn't reach out to touch anything. She moved like someone walking through a museum, respectful, alert. Roland watched her closely. She wasn't pretending to be used to luxury. She wasn't gawking either. She was observing, calculating, taking mental notes. She stopped in front of the wide window and looked out at the water before turning back to him. "Why me?" she finally asked. The question was direct, no softness. Roland hesitated. He had prepared answers for investors, for journalists, for board members, but not for this. "You don't know me," he said slowly. "You don't want my money, and you clearly don't like me." Miranda scoffed lightly. "I don't know you enough to like or dislike you." A small pause. "Exactly," he replied. He met her eyes, holding her gaze longer this time. "I need someone real." Miranda burst into laughter. Not polite laughter, but the kind that filled the quiet apartment and bounced off the glass walls. "Someone real for a fake girlfriend?" she said, shaking her head. "You picked the wrong street, Mr. Adeyemi. Everybody is acting in Lagos." For the first time, Roland laughed too, not the controlled chuckle he used at business dinners. A genuine laugh. And in that shared moment, standing between glass walls and city water, between wealth and survival, something shifted. The deal still stood, the terms were still clear, but the air felt different. Less like a transaction, more like the beginning of something neither of them had planned. "Send your account details to me," Roland said. "Now you're talking business," Miranda replied. She pulled out her phone and sent her account number. It didn't take long. Her phone buzzed. Credit alert. The amount reflected on her screen made her heart skip. For a second, the world around her went silent. She had never received that much money in her entire life. Her fingers trembled slightly. She quickly locked her phone before he could see the full reaction on her face. The smile threatening to break through was too wide, too real, but she fought to keep it together. Control. Always control. "Thank you, Roland. Nice doing business with you," she said, keeping her tone steady. Roland extended his hand. Miranda took it without hesitation. Her palms were firm and slightly rough, the hands of someone who worked daily over hot oil and charcoal heat. Not soft, not delicate. Strong. The way she held his hand confidently, without shyness or submission, made something flicker in his mind. She didn't cling, didn't linger, just a firm shake. Then she let go. Roland cleared his throat slightly and stated the deal again, this time clearly and professionally. The deal was simple. She would attend 3 public events with him. They would be photographed. They would act like a couple. She would stay with him for the week the arrangement lasted. She would receive the remaining balance at the end, a life-changing amount, and disappear from his life forever. Valentine's Night Gala would be the final show. After that, they would go their separate ways. Clean, simple, controlled, or so they thought. Roland showed her the guest room, simple, elegant, larger than Miranda's entire apartment back home, then left for a meeting, instructing his driver to wait downstairs. The moment the door shut behind him, Miranda stood still for 2 seconds. Then she screamed quietly. She jumped onto the soft bed and started dancing. "God of heaven!" she whispered excitedly. She grabbed her phone immediately and called her younger brother. "Guess what?" she said, trying not to shout too loudly. "Check your account." Before we continue our story, please subscribe to our channel, Story Lovers Hub with Rano. We bring you captivating stories, thrilling plots, and unforgettable characters. Hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share so you never miss out on our latest content. Join our community of story lovers today. We'd love to have you with us, besties. Now back to our story. Before he could even ask questions, she sent $200,000 out of the $500,000 she had received up front. Her hands were still shaking. She called her mother next. "Mama, don't argue. Just collect it. It's business money," she said firmly when her mother started asking questions. Tears filled her eyes after she ended the call. For the first time in a long while, she felt ahead of life. She lay back on the bed staring at the ceiling, this one smooth and spotless, already making plans in her head. New stove, bigger stand, plastic chairs for customers, maybe even rent a small shop. Her Akara business could grow. This was temporary, strategic. She smiled, then her stomach growled loudly. Celebration without food?" she muttered. She went into the kitchen, opening cabinets confidently, only to find bottled drinks. Expensive sparkling water, protein bars, and a few untouched packs of instant noodles. She blinked. "How can someone be so rich and starving?" she said to herself. "No rice, no beans, no proper food, just beverages and fancy nonsense." Miranda shook her head. She picked up her purse, went downstairs, and bought basic ingredients from a nearby store: vegetables, eggs, pepper, onions. Back upstairs, she took over the kitchen like it belonged to her. Soon, the sound of sizzling onions filled the space. She cooked all 6 packs of noodles properly, not the plain lazy version, but Lagos style, spiced, garnished, alive. She dished out a generous portion for Roland and placed it neatly on the dining table. Then she served herself the rest and sat comfortably, eating with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Roland was on his way home. During his meeting, he had found himself smiling at odd moments. One of Miranda's earlier statements replayed in his head, her insisting on control, her boldness. It amused him. A woman trying to negotiate dominance with him, a man who commanded boardrooms and made decisions that moved millions. It was almost entertaining. By the time he returned home that night, he opened the door to something unexpected, a warm aroma, spices, real food. He paused. That scent did not belong in his apartment. He walked toward the dining area and froze slightly. There was a plate of noodles sitting neatly on his table. Before he could process it fully, Miranda walked out from the kitchen. "You are back, fake boyfriend," she said casually. Roland frowned slightly. "Don't sound like that. That's too local," he corrected automatically. And what is that on my table?" He adjusted his tone, slipping back into professionalism. Miranda crossed her arms. "Fine man like you doesn't have a single proper food in your house," she said, shaking her head. "That's the last noodles I found in your kitchen. We need to talk about this. If I am staying here, I'm not ready to starve and be drinking beverages every day of my life for 7 days." Roland wanted to laugh, but he didn't. "Do you realize you are here on contract?" he said calmly. "You are supposed to manage yourself, not move around my house as you like." Miranda gasped dramatically. "So sorry, Mr. Adeyemi," she replied sarcastically. "Should I dispose of the one on the table?" She reached for the plate. "I don't care what you do with that," Roland said coolly. But just as Miranda turned to walk away with it, he stopped her. He stepped forward and took the plate from her hands. "Those were mine," he said. "So now I decide what to do with this garbage." Miranda raised an eyebrow. Roland picked up the fork. He took one bite, then another. Silence filled the room. Miranda watched him carefully. Roland cleared his throat. "It's acceptable," he said flatly. Miranda smirked. "Boardroom standard?" He didn't answer, but he didn't stop eating either. And for the first time since she stepped into his glass and silence world, his apartment felt lived in. The first event was a rooftop dinner in Victoria Island, the kind of place where the city lights glittered like they were competing with the stars. Soft music floated through the air, and everything, from the glass tables to the champagne flutes, looked expensive. Miranda had never worn a gown like the one the stylist brought. It was deep red, elegant, fitted perfectly to her frame in a way that made her both confident and slightly nervous. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. "You look—" Roland started when she stepped out. She raised an eyebrow immediately. "Don't finish that sentence." He smiled slightly. "You look ready." She rolled her eyes, pretending it didn't matter. But when they stepped onto the rooftop and cameras began flashing, something shifted. The lights were bright. The whispers were loud. Miranda suddenly felt very aware of where she came from, of charcoal smoke and noisy streets far away from this polished world. Then she felt it, Roland's hand resting gently on her lower back. Not possessive, protective, steady. It unsettled her because it felt natural. For the first time, Miranda truly looked at him, his calm eyes, sharp features, the quiet confidence in his smile. She had always seen him as just a handsome, rich man, but the way he subtly guided her through conversations, the way he noticed when she felt out of place without her saying a word, it made her swallow. That night, lying in bed, she replayed everything. "Ah, God, let me not fall in love with someone out of my league," she whispered, "because that heartbreak will be premium." Meanwhile, Roland couldn't get the image of Miranda in that red dress out of his mind, and that realization unsettled him just as much. A lot of little things Miranda did were getting to him. On the second day, Roland took Miranda grocery shopping for supplies that would last the week of her stay. She moved confidently through the aisles, filling the cart with real food, rice, vegetables, spices, while Roland watched, slightly amused, realizing his quiet apartment was about to change. By the third day, the internet was already talking. Who is Roland's mystery woman? Roland got a new girlfriend 3 weeks after breakup with Vanessa? Miranda tried not to read comments, but Lagos never lets you ignore noise. A lot of people still know her, and it was just a matter of time, and the press will come out to tell the world who is Roland's new girlfriend. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. They were driving back from an evening event a little past 9, both exhausted from smiling for cameras and pretending everything was effortless, when the car gave a sudden, violent jerk. The driver pulled over. Flat tire. Roland tried to book an Uber immediately, but the network was terrible. The app kept loading. Calls failed. The street was dimly lit, too quiet for comfort. Waiting there didn't feel safe. They locked the car and decided to walk to a nearby guest house they had passed a few minutes earlier. The walk was silent, no flashing lights, no staged laughter, just their footsteps and the distant hum of traffic. Roland reached for her hand without thinking. Miranda hesitated for half a second, then held it. At the reception, panic settled in. Roland checked his pockets. His expression changed. "My phone and my ATM card," he said quietly. He had left both in the car. Miranda closed her eyes briefly, then stepped forward. "I'll pay." When the receptionist mentioned the price, 200,000 naira for one night, her heart skipped. That was almost half of what remained with her, but she transferred it anyway. "We're booking 2 separate rooms," Roland said quickly. "I don't have more than 200,000, Miranda replied firmly. In his mind, he replayed the 500,000 naira he had sent her just days ago. How could it be gone already? Inside the room, he complained of hunger. The menu showed 50,000 naira per plate. "I'm not hungry," Miranda said softly, ordering only his meal. In her account, just 50,000 naira remained. As he ate, Roland muttered, 500,000 naira I sent you just 4 days ago is gone. The words broke something in her. Tears filled her eyes. "I know I look small to you," she whispered, "but I have responsibilities, a brother in school, a sick mother. I don't spend money carelessly." The room grew heavy. Roland's voice softened. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." She turned away, wiping her face. "You'll sleep on the floor," she said, climbing onto the bed. And that night, Roland, the man who commanded boardrooms, lay on the floor staring at the ceiling, humbled by a truth he had never needed to understand before. The 5th day arrived quietly. Roland woke first, his back aching slightly from the hard floor. For a moment, he didn't move. Miranda was still asleep on the large bed, her face relaxed, free from the sharp confidence she carried during the day. His eyes drifted to her lips before he quickly swallowed and looked away. He shouldn't be looking. He gently called her name. She stirred and stretched lazily, unaware of the way it made him smile. "What's so funny?" she asked, rolling her eyes. Then her tone shifted. "Ma, better send me my money. This is business." The reminder landed. It was as if she sensed he was beginning to forget. By late morning, they checked out. The driver arrived in another car, returning Roland's phone and ATM card. Miranda was distracted on her phone when an alert came in. 500,000 naira. She froze. Slowly, she turned to look at Roland. "That's your money for last night," he said calmly. Her face lit up. Without thinking, she hugged him tightly. "Thank you." His heart beat faster than it should have. How could he be falling for someone he met beside a roadside stove? He had already done far more than the contract required, and strangely, he didn't regret it. Miranda felt relief wash over her. This week felt like rest from constant struggle, but the image of him sleeping on the floor stayed with her. "He is so annoying and so sweet," she whispered later. 2 days and I'm out of here." On the 6th day, she cooked homemade food and even served the driver, who praised her warmly. Roland watched from a distance, jealousy rising unexpectedly. He quickly cautioned the driver about professionalism. Later, while shopping for her Valentine gala dress, other men noticed Miranda. Roland noticed too. And when she looked at herself in the mirror, glowing in a new dress, Miranda felt something dangerous growing inside her, a softness that was never part of the plan. The night before Valentine's, Roland sat alone in his apartment, the city lights reflecting against the glass walls. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to think about Vanessa. Vanessa had always loved the spotlight, vacations for the camera, and designer gifts for social media, public displays that looked perfect online. She was everything his parents once approved of, polished, influential, ideal. But she had never truly seen him. With her, love had felt like a transaction. The bigger the gift, the louder the affection. Roland had hoped feelings would grow. They never did, at least not for him. When she left, it stung his pride more than his heart. And seeing her move on so quickly had only confirmed what he already knew. His original plan had been simple: show up at the Valentine Gala with someone unexpected, make a statement, prove he had moved on. He never planned to feel anything. But now his heart was entangled in ways he hadn't prepared for. Valentine's night arrived like a storm. The gala was grand, chandeliers shimmering overhead, red roses lining the hall, and champagne flowing endlessly. Vanessa was there, glowing, confident, with her new man beside her. When Roland and Miranda entered hand in hand, the room shifted. Whispers rose. Phones lifted. Miranda's heart pounded. "Relax," Roland whispered. "For a fake relationship, you're holding my hand too tight," she murmured. He loosened his grip slightly, but he didn't let go. Vanessa approached, smile perfectly measured. "Roland," she greeted sweetly, then looked at Miranda. "And this is?" "Miranda?" Roland replied firmly. "My girlfriend." The word felt heavier than expected. Girlfriend. Miranda felt it settle deep inside her. "Well," Vanessa smiled thinly. "Interesting choice." "Thank you," Miranda answered calmly. The tension between them was sharp enough to slice. Roland later introduced Miranda to his parents. His father, older and quieter now, smiled warmly. But it was his mother who noticed first, the way Roland looked at Miranda. That softness, that focus. Mrs. Carter stepped onto the stage later that evening. "Years ago, on Valentine's Day, I found the love I have cherished for so long," she said. "Tonight, I hope everyone here experiences genuine love." Roland couldn't stop looking at Miranda, and she couldn't stop looking at him. This wasn't acting anymore. It was real. Even Vanessa, once the reason for all of this, faded into the background. Mrs. Carter invited her son for the first dance. Roland extended his hand. Miranda took it. As they danced, their eyes never left each other. Miranda felt it fully now. She was in love. And somewhere deep inside, she wondered if she could survive walking away. Later, on the balcony overlooking Lagos, she gathered her courage. "When this ends tomorrow, don't look for me again." Roland stared at her. "Why?" "Because this is your world, not mine." "Who says you don't belong?" She laughed softly. "Look around." He stepped closer. "I'm not looking around." Silence. "I don't want it to end," he said. "Don't do that," she whispered. "Do what?" "Make it real." He swallowed. "What if it already is?" She stepped back. "We had a deal." "Yes. And tomorrow I take the money and go back to my life." He nodded slowly. "But what if I don't want you to?" "You don't even know if you love me." "I know I don't feel like acting anymore." Inside, music swelled. Laughter floated outward. Lagos glittered endlessly below, and for the first time, they both understood something terrifying. They were no longer pretending. Valentine's night was supposed to end the performance. Instead, it began something neither of them had planned, and Lagos, as always, was watching. Vanessa saw everything, from the way Roland's fingers lingered at Miranda's waist to the softness in his eyes when Miranda laughed. Her smile remained polished, but her posture stiffened. She had expected him to stay single for a while, to miss her, to struggle publicly. Instead, here he was, calm and composed beside another woman, looking settled. The night continued with polite conversations and flashing cameras, but something had shifted. Roland and Miranda no longer felt like performers. Their smiles were no longer forced. When the guests began to leave, Roland greeted his parents one last time. His father squeezed his shoulder warmly. His mother's eyes held quiet understanding. Then Roland reached for Miranda's hand. Back home, he made the remaining transfer. Miranda's phone buzzed. She looked at the alert, the final payment. "Thank you," she said softly. But this time, there was no excitement, no dancing. Her heart was heavy. Somewhere between rooftop dinners and shared struggles, she had fallen for a man she wasn't supposed to love. Fear crept in. If people ever truly found out who she was, where she sold beans, where she came from, they would call her a gold digger. "Hold it together," she whispered to herself later that night. "Tomorrow I go back to my food stand. All of this ends." Roland retreated to his room, exhausted but restless. The thought of her leaving in the morning unsettled him. He lay awake, scrolling through their photos, the red dress, the balcony, the dance. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't control. The night was long, morning arrived too quickly. Roland stood in the living room as Miranda came out with her small bag packed. She looked smaller somehow, distant. He wondered if his feelings were real or if he was simply caught up in the moment. The contract was over. This was where it should end. "I wish you well," he said quietly. Miranda nodded, forcing strength into her voice. "Take care, Roland." She walked away, and something in him felt hollow. Vanessa, however, was not done. Out of wounded pride, she paid bloggers to investigate Miranda. Within hours, the headlines spread. "Billionaire's mystery girlfriend exposed, just a street food seller." The internet buzzed with commentary. Miranda, back in her small apartment, was already struggling with the goodbye when her phone began exploding with notifications. She opened one link and froze, her face, her name, her background displayed carelessly. Outside, neighbors gossiped loudly. "See? We knew it." She was living fake life. Her chest tightened. "I'm sure he's embarrassed," she whispered, tears threatening. "This is my sign not to let this get to me." Across the city, Roland saw the news too. He felt no embarrassment, only anger. His house felt too big, too empty. He didn't care about bloggers or gossip. What unsettled him was that Miranda might think he cared. His mother called him over that afternoon. "Is the news true?" Mrs. Carter asked gently. Roland nodded. She studied him carefully. "And where is she now?" "She left." Mrs. Carter could see the loss in her son's eyes, something she had never seen with Vanessa. Roland exhaled deeply. "I didn't plan this. It started as something else." "And now?" she asked. He hesitated, then spoke honestly. "Now I don't want to lose her." There was a pause. "If you love her," his mother said softly, "go and get her." Roland blinked. He had expected resistance. After all, it was Mrs. Carter who once approved of Vanessa. Instead, he found support. He hugged his mother tightly and left immediately, driving straight to the address Miranda had sent him days ago. The street was narrow. Children played nearby. Women sat outside gossiping. When Roland stepped out of the car, the whispers began instantly. He knocked. Miranda opened the door. Her eyes were swollen slightly from crying. She froze when she saw him. "You came," she said quietly. "I'm not embarrassed," he said before she could speak again. "I'm not ashamed of you. I don't care what they say." She looked away. "You don't belong here." He stepped closer. "I belong wherever you are." Silence hung between them. "You deserve someone in your world," she whispered. "My world was empty before you," he replied. "Miranda, I don't want a contract. I don't want performance. I want you." Her heart pounded. "This is not pity?" she asked. "No," he said firmly. "This is the first real thing I've felt in years." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "And if tomorrow the world laughs again?" she asked. "Then we laugh louder." For the first time since the headlines broke, Miranda smiled. He reached for her hand, not as part of a deal, but as a promise, and she let him hold it. From that day forward, everything changed. Miranda rented a better apartment and brought her mother and younger brother to the city. She returned to school, determined to expand her knowledge and grow her business properly. Roland supported her, not as a savior, but as a partner. She still cooked. He still worked long hours. But now, they shared something real. What started as a contract built on pride and revenge had turned into something neither of them had planned. Roland had